Morning. Welcome to our 30th INiTS Scaleup Talk. So for those of you who joined us today for the first time, let me give you just a few words about our Scaleup Talk and about INiTS. INiTS is the high-tech incubator of the city of Vienna. What we do is that we offer a service for people who have innovative high-tech ideas, and they come to us and we help them to build out of this initial idea as a company who's able to scale, and hopefully they will then, starting from Vienna, conquer the world with their brilliant idea. The Scaleup Talk is initially, we initially started it in the first lockdown of the pandemic. And the idea was, first of all, to stay in touch with the community and, of course, to present you different, interesting people with interesting ideas, and to show you how colorful the ways to becoming an entrepreneur could be. They all started from different settings, and also their entire development path was quite different. Today, we have our talk in English because our founder has English as a mother tongue. And I will again, as for all the other talks we already had, invite you to also be part of it. And if you have a question that comes up to your mind when you listen to our talk, just pose it immediately in the chat, let us know. And in the second part of our talk, we will then come back to your questions and ask them directly to the founder, so that you are vivid part of our Scaleup Talk today. As you have seen in our introduction already, our today's guest is Ben James, and yeah, Ben, welcome on our virtual stage. Hi, good morning. Good to have you here, Ben.
Cheers. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Ben, let's jump directly into the topic, and maybe you could yourself, what your background is, and how it all started.
Sure. My background is a little bit split. So on the one hand, I grew up in Florida, and I pursued a business degree, and I worked as a financial and strategy consultant in New York City and London for several years. But I felt that wasn't really the most, that wasn't as creatively fulfilling as I had hoped it would be. And I ended up here in Vienna at the Angewandte, taking a master's degree in architecture. At this time, my fascination was kind of the role that new technology could play in the design process. And also, coincidentally, a little bit of a shock at the role that it didn't typically play in the design process. I was doing a lot of work with machine vision, trying to think about how to reflect and visualize architecture within augmented reality at that time. And it led to some explorations trying to think if I could connect machine vision with machine learning in some sort of meaningful way, so that could use AI as a sort of creative design partner. And yeah, this was kind of the foundation of our company, which is called mlxar. It's short for machine learning extended architecture. Not the easiest to say, but
tongue breaker.
but easy to patent, to trademark. And so yeah, that was the idea that I had, and I myself am capable of some basic coding, even some basic AI coding. And so when I think first met you and INiTS, it was when I kind of came with this idea of AI as a creative design partner, one which could work with an architect to generate architecture structures.
So you had the idea, you had some basic knowledge, needed to actually make it real. And how did you actually come to INiTS?
Well, I think one of the things for me when I was at that stage of the company starting out is that it's unclear sometimes when you're early on in the process the distinction between an idea and a startup. And what I had at that time was an idea. I had a little bit of some proof of concepts, but the reason that I came to INiTS is because I wanted to take the idea and turn it more into a startup. And so that meant building around it a proper business model, a revenue model, a network of advisors and supporters of the project. Yeah, so this was really kind of what drove me to come to INiTS.
How did you know about us?
I was at the time living in Vienna, still am living in Vienna. And I sort of sought out incubators in Europe to take the idea and kind of initiate this process. And so I just found INiTS through online, and then you have an application process. I went through that, and I think one of the things that stood out to me was kind of your focus on the lean startup approach, which was really helpful in our case. Yeah.
So then you applied for INiTS and started the incubation program. So when you look back at it from today's perspective, what were your main insights you got at INiTS?
Yeah, I mean, when you're early stage, like we were applying to INiTS, you get a breadth of information, some of which is more immediately applicable, and others which are further down the line. So for example, things like some of the sales and marketing workshops that we did, were not applicable at that early stage of the company. But I think what was really fundamentally helpful to us was the focus on this lean startup approach. And the idea behind the lean startup approach is that as early as possible and as frequent as possible, you should go out to the market and you should sort of test these ideas that you have. And when I say market, what I mean is the potential group of relevant stakeholders. So when I came into INiTS, I very much conceptualized our business as a platform for architects to use. And that comes from my background as an architect, that comes from speaking to architects. And I think there is a valuable use case for our machine learning software within architecture. However, we spoke to visual effects artists, we spoke to film developers, we spoke to game developers, we spoke to urban planners. And what we realized is that although each of these markets has a similar problem in terms of the expensive and time-consuming nature of content creation, the game developers where we felt an immediate market pull. So I think one of the quotes that I always really liked from the game developers, one of them told us that I design more architecture in a single game than an architecture office does in 10 years, and I'm not trained as an architect. And so,
wow.
So for us, this was a little bit of an enlightenment, where we realized, the core of what we were building, this sort of AI platform to generate architecture structures, would be a much bigger immediate use case to the gaming industry, which happens to also be a much larger and faster growing industry than the architecture industry.
So that sounds a bit special in your case, because it happens quite often that you start with the idea A, let's say, and then it turns out that when you get in touch with the market, that it doesn't work out as well as you thought it might do, and then you say, okay, let's have a look if there is something else where I could use my technology, and go for the next one, and you basically skip the initial idea. In your case, I got the feeling that this is not really the perfect description for your situation.
Yeah, well, you're right in a sense that it's the same underlying sort of core generative technology that we're developing that can be applied in both use cases. But at the same time, there is an element or a very key element of importance of doing this early, because once you sort of get beyond the sort of core functionality of some of the R&D that we're doing, the actual requirements for build architecture are significantly different, obviously, than the requirements for game development architecture. And so if we would start to build out a workflow and pipeline to integrate into existing architecture, built architecture workflows, integrate things like sustainability metrics into the AI or structural parameters, we would have gone down a path where we would have spent and dedicated resources and thinking into a direction that in our case is actually not the largest, sort of most immediate and greatest potential for us. And so I think what's really helpful is to identify that early on, and be able to pivot then and go for the market where we think market entry will be the most successful, and where there's that pull. I think what we found is it's so much easier to go into a market that is actively looking for a solution like the one you're offering, rather than having to educate the market that the way they do things now, although their preferred way, could be better.
So the one market is already there and the other one has to be built.
Exactly. And, we still have the view that if we build out successfully, or as we build out successfully within the game development market, there will be bleed over into these other industries, because people will realize that there's a powerful content creation tool that's generating architecture. And, depending on some of the size and demand for those markets, we may choose to embrace some of those branches. But, for now, the gaming industry is far and away large enough for us. I think it's a $175 billion market, so it has some room to grow.
Okay, so yeah, I think so. So what was your next step then?
So we finished the INiTS incubator. We kind of took this idea, we pivoted into the gaming industry, and we had built around this some ideas, first of all, some networks in gaming and AI, some ideas for our business model, our revenue model, but we were still very early stage, pre-revenue. We no longer had just an idea, but we certainly didn't have something that was market ready. Also, this is a fairly R&D intensive startup that we are running, because there's a lot of resources that need to be dedicated towards machine learning, building out new algorithms and networks. So we felt there were a few options we could do. We could seek investment at that stage, maybe something from an angel investor or a pre-seed investor. But we felt that we would be more comfortable with further developed prototyping and proof of concept, rather than just kind of at an ideation stage. So we were very fortunate enough to be here in the Austrian ecosystem, where there is certain grant fundings available for early stage startups such as ours that have high R&D costs. We're also fortunate enough, we were one of the startups selected by the Start Capital program at INiTS. So we received, first off, some early stage funding from INiTS, which is for those that are not familiar, it's kind of a founder-friendly funding program, because it doesn't require a valuation of the company. There's kind of a static valuation that's applied, and there are opportunities that if you are growing rapidly in the future, as we have done a little bit to deal with the investment in more of like a convertible note sort of scenario. So we received some funding from INiTS, which was great, and then we also, in addition, received funding from both the FFG for an impact innovation grant, and from the AWS for a trustworthy AI focused kind of dev grant. And this was important because this allowed us basically to build out enough early stage prototyping and proof of concept testing to understand on two levels, to understand on the market level much greater detail of, I told you it's a $175 billion market, but we have to understand what's the segmentation there, who exactly are our customers, how do we leverage smaller developers to enter larger AAA game developers, and on the technology side to really understand what are state-of-the-art networks in this domain, how can we use those, where are their limitations, what are the challenges for future development. And so once we've done that, and we now have both more robust early stage proof of concept AI models to show, and we have a better understanding of what our market looks like, then we felt more comfortable to go out to the market and seek investment.
And well, so that sounds like a crystal clear strategy you actually had, and you're still following that one, as far as I know. So did that actually work out? What you planned with being ready for investments to come?
Yeah, that we feel much more comfortable in our position. And so although we haven't announced an investment round, we have been successful in raising seed investment. Mm-hmm. And again, we think that in many ways there is a balance usually in our development between there is an inherent large R&D aspect to what we are doing, that's difficult still, even at our stage, to fund via investment. So our investors tend to look at our near-term market opportunities, but we still are engaged in the Austrian ecosystem, looking at larger grants that are available for technical development of the AI systems. And so I think we feel that we're in a pretty good place now in terms of having received investment, and that we may still be a candidate for further R&D, R&D research.
So when you condense your experience into, let's say, 2, 3, 4 bullet points, where you say, okay, what were the utmost important issues to be investor ready?
I think a lot of it is, so first and foremost, it's the idea. I think that when you're at a pre-seed or seed stage, you need to have an idea, and you need to believe that this idea can be a very huge business, in my opinion, because a lot of investors, and I think it's also the reason that most founders do this, have kind of very lofty ambitions for where you'd like that to go. So that's, let's say, the prerequisite. If you don't have sort of that idea and that ambition, I think that's then you're in tough shape. But then you need to have a meaningful idea of how to get there. Yeah, you don't need to necessarily at a pre-seed or a seed stage, I think, need to already be executing on that, although that will be expected shortly after raise. But you need to have thought through roadmap, lines of effort, workflows, and pipelines that will get you there, both in terms of like a business model, but also a revenue model. And then you need to show some form of traction. And this can be, in our case, being pre-revenue, this was not financial traction, but it could be traction in terms of test users. It could be traction in terms of that test user feedback, or it could be traction in terms of the speed of your technology development. So there are other ways to measure traction rather than simply revenue. But of course, if you're in the market, then revenue is a very good indicator. And then lastly is, you hear it all the time, but is team, of course. So making sure that on top of everything else, that you're the right people to execute this. So it's not just that it's a good idea. It's not just that there's a roadmap for how to execute on that good idea, but finally that there are the people involved in this project that will successfully do that. Okay.
Well, we'll come back to that later on if there's still time. Now I would like to renew my invitation to our audience. So if you have any questions, just go for it. Please feel free and post it in our chat. And actually there is already the first one, which is, well, also quite an essential one. So it comes down to the question, how do you plan to earn money? So what's your business model, and what is your market end-to-end growth strategy?
So we are still pre-revenue. So this is
yeah.
Very much. I think there's a few key things that we've learned about the gaming industry that I can say here. I'm not sure how applicable this is to other industries, but I will try to generalize it in a sense that it may be. The gaming industry is made up of certain really large companies that, so your enterprise level customers that have enormous budgets. I mean, almost unfathomably large budgets that even they spend, tens of millions of dollars on games that never even go into production. That accounts for a small segment of the overall market. The overall market being much more the smaller and mid-market game developers that have smaller budgets. Of course, on first look, you would think that you want to go into the really large companies, and we do, for example, a pilot project with Square Enix, one of these largest companies in the game space. But actually, in many ways, as a market entry strategy, you want to be able to reach that decision maker very quickly. You want shorter sales cycles, and you want, in our case, shorter game development times. And so these are the attributes of the mid-market developers. And so for us, the market entry strategy is very much go into these mid-market developers, speak to people who can both be sort of decision makers and buyers, so they wear the same role in the company, and then we can very quickly kind of grow our presence. And through adoption, you know, we think there's some pretty large avenues of success there. So of course, there's the avenue of success where you would say, well, you can quantify, you know, through metrics, your time and cost savings of all of these development. You can build catalogs of games and models you've worked on, and that's very persuasive to the larger companies. But there's also some moats that you can build in that respect as well, because the more interactions you have with developers, the more data you have into an AI system builds up naturally a somewhat of a competitive advantage and a barrier to entry. So that's our strategy. I think the other aspect of that then is, you know, we focus on where does our AI platform, where does that land for these kind of mid-market developers? Because if you're a large AAA game studio, our platform has the potential to save tremendous amounts of time and cost and savings. But if you're a smaller or a mid-market developer, what's really interesting is it's actually that our platform allows for you to make games that you would not have otherwise been able to make. So if you want to make an open world game, if you're a smaller, medium-sized developer, that's a very prohibitively expensive thing to do in your current state. But if you have a tool that generates these virtual worlds and these virtual cities, that becomes a possibility. And so it also influences a little bit some of the functionalities and the attributes we build into the platform.
Okay, we have, thank you very much, Ben. We have another question from the audience. There's someone, Karin, who is listening very carefully because she recognized that you're always saying we, and she knows you from the very beginning when it was still an I. So the question is, you obviously have a team now, and how did it all begin, and how did you get your team members? So if you could tell us some words about that, please.
It's nice to see Karen is listening on this, because she has seen this project for a very long time. You know, yeah, the team has grown. So there's, I think we are 7 at the moment. So largely, it's grown around our CTO and myself. Sort of did a lot of the early prototyping and concepting work ourselves. But one of the things that I think has been very helpful early on, when you're first a solo founder and then a very small team, is the network of advisors that you can put around yourself. At least in our case, we found this to be exceptionally helpful, because they are people that can share that burden a little bit of, you know, giving you very thoughtful advice, although they're not, you know, a full-on team member. And then as we've grown, you know, we've realized that some of the tasks are beyond simply our small skill set, and we need to grow. And so, yeah, we've looked to kind of initially work a lot with like different freelancers to sort of specialize our knowledge and then grow up in that way.
So where are you today in terms of team size?
We are about 7 today.
Okay.
Not everyone on a lot of yeah, we are still on some freelance contracts, but yeah.
Okay, sounds great. Now the questions are popping in one after the other. Is mlxar the only enterprise you started in past? Are you connected to Charisma? And to play for is also.
I'm not familiar with Charisma or to play for, so I'm not connected there, but maybe I should check them out. mlxar is the only enterprise that I've started. I've worked yeah, both as an architect and as an architect, I have done a lot of kind of solo exhibitions and things like this, where you sort of present yourself more than and your work, but as enterprise and startups go, this is the first.
Okay, thank you. So no further questions so far. You mentioned before that Well, this you just shared your investment strategy, and you're about to close the well, next financing round. That's what I understood. Is well, my question, of course, what are you planning to do with that money? So, what will be the the next steps then?
So this is where we would like to you know, use this money to enter the market. So I think, you know, of course we need to now get our technology from this kind of POC, proof of concept stage that it's at now, to a market ready stage, and to start actually kind of then flexing and testing these business and revenue models that we've envisioned for the company. So I think we, you know, in our trajectory, we also have to be cognizant that we aim for a Series A. So we have a run rate of about you know, 2 years now, which I think is a fairly safe period in this market to aim for. And we will kind of try to grow accordingly and meet certain milestones that we think will be relevant for a Series A investor, and specifically milestones around traction, you know, and so hopefully those are revenue-oriented traction, but also it can be in terms of the number of developers that are using our platform, the kind of retention rates that we have, and the technology milestones that we can implement there in terms of the diversity of worlds that we are creating, and all of this. So yeah, so I think we very much try and structure it that we look, you know, we look about 2 years. We of course look more than 2 years out into the future, but in a much more detailed forecast, we look about 2 years out into the future, and then we try to understand what we'd like to achieve in terms of goals there to what we would look like at that stage, and then what are kind of the lines of effort that we put in place to to achieve that. And we're starting, you know, now the round finished very recently, and so we are just starting on some of those early stages, but I think we are excited basically for where this will go.
Yeah, it sounds great. So what about your initial idea, the initial market, the world of architects? What about that?
You know, I think when you're early like us, you have to stay focused. I would love to do architecture. I would love to. We also heard a lot from visual effects artists, you know, that we're a great stage to do the backgrounds for films and stuff like this. But I think, you know, we have our market, we have our goals and our objectives in that market, and I think we're gonna heads down go for that. And let's see in you know, maybe 2 or 3 years, if we've reached a level of success there, we might look to grow beyond just gaming, but let's see.
So for today, you're doing everything that 7 people can do, more or less.
Our team is fully maxed out. So there's no room to
maxed out. Nice expression. So we're coming close to the end of our interview already. 1 more minute and one last question. For all the potential founders out there now listening to our interview, what recommendations could you give them?
Yeah, I mean, in our case, we really benefited from testing with diverse stakeholders at an early stage, because it led to a pivot that has been pretty foundational for, I think, our success in terms of finding investors and seeking the right product market fit here. So, you know, for us, I think that was a great takeaway, is just go out and imagine anyone that might be able to use your underlying product or core technology or wherever you're at in your dev stage, and then get that feedback and look at it critically and try to understand if there's better market opportunities to make sense to pivot before you go too far down a certain path.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Ben, it was a great pleasure to have you here with us, and I think we could continue for hours talking, but we have to end it here. Thank you very much. It was a great pleasure, and all the best for your next steps.
Thanks, Michael. Same to you. Thank you. Bye.
So we are continuing with our Scaleup Talk series, of course, and I today already want to invite you for our next talk, which takes place on the 10th of November. And we will have Philipp Maruszek from Iguana as our guest in the next talk, and they are focusing on the building industry, and also, but from a different or completely different angle. So I'm looking forward to welcome you in our next talk. And for today, I wish you a nice day, and all the best for everything you're planning to do. Have a nice day and goodbye.